The next type of condition in buyu is the impermissible ones, that which is not permissible in buyu. Such as, for example, stipulating a second contract based upon the first one. Such as, for example, stipulating a second contract, meaning in Arabic, bay'ani fi bay', two bay'as in one bay', two contracts in one contract. What is an example of that? An example of that is, Brother Salim, I will sell you, okay, let me give the example of, the marriage context. So, Brother Salim, I will marry you my daughter with the condition that you marry your daughter to me. Or I will marry my sister to you with the condition that you marry your sister to me. So that is like one transaction with another transaction. Okay? In the same way, if you can go over into cars and in a different commodity and say, for example, I will sell you my car with the condition that you sell your car to me. Right? Or I will sell you my car with the condition that you sell your car to my brother. So this is one condition based upon another one contract based upon another contract, which is not permitted in Islam. Every contract has to be separate. This is why in the banks, when you go to buy a house, what do they say? They have bay'ani fi bay'. How? They have two sales and one sale. How? You show them a house, right? You show them a house that you want to buy, and what they do is they buy the house from that guy, from the third party, and then they sell it to you straight away. Isn't it? So they do this in one go, in one process. That's actually bay'ani fi bay'. We will come to that inshallah in the fourth session when we really break it down of how the banks really do their mortgages. The next type of condition that really goes against that is not permissible is stipulating condition that goes against the purpose of the transaction. So stipulating a condition that goes against the purpose, the whole purpose of the transaction is that you are the owner and you get to do what you want with it. However, if someone gives you the condition saying, I will sell it to you with the condition that you can't sell it. I will sell it to you with the condition that you can't use it. I'll sell you this house with the condition that you can't live in it. So these are all haram conditions, and therefore it is not right. What we want to talk about, inshallah, now is the different types of contracts. Now, before we enter into talking about the modern transactions, we have to look at what classical fiqh has talked about regarding contracts. It's important to understand that business, that the transaction between a human being and another human being in normal classical fiqh has been divided up into different chapters. So we have buyu, for example, we have buying and selling, and then buying and selling has been itself divided up into different chapters. So for example, we have the chapter of buying and selling, which is called buyu. Then we have the chapter of renting, which is called ijara. Then we have the chapter of wikala, for example, agency. Then we have the chapter of bay' al-usul al-thimar, for example, the chapter of buying and selling land and produce. Then we have the chapter of, for example, sibaq, for example, the chapter of competitions, on basically regarding sporting competitions and all that. We have the chapter of, for example, hawala, transactions or transferring of a debt, etc., etc. So we have all these different chapters within buyu. For example, you can say mu'amalat, section of mu'amalat in business, and based on this, we have, therefore, Islam has different conditions and different shurut, etc., etc., different mawani, different prohibitions in each type of in each chapter, and each chapter is like a contract. So therefore, in a particular transaction, you can have, it's a transaction of buying and selling, or it might be a transaction of renting, or it might be a transaction of transfer of debt, or it might be a transfer of XYZ, etc. So whenever you look at a transaction, you need to be able to associate associate it with the classical chapters of fiqh that we know of, in order for you to know what the hukum, what the conditions that apply in such a condition, in a certain transaction are, and what its prohibitions are. The types of contracts in Islam can be divided up into different types depending on the way that we look at it and the way that we consider it. So I have listed here about 6 different ways in which we can look at different contracts. 6 different ways. The first way is by way of hukum of the Sharia. By way of hukum of the Sharia, how are the different contracts of buying and selling? By way of hukum of the Sharia, so based on, for example, whether the contract is wajib, or it's recommended, mustahab, or mubah, permissible, or disliked, makruh, and if it's haram, forbidden, we can divide up the contracts in this sort of way. So for example, an example of a wajib contract would be marriage. For example, if someone fears falling into the haram, something that would be wajib, for example, is selling the produce that you have with you if the people are in extreme need of it. It's wajib for you to sell, you can't just hold it back. Example of a recommended one would be, for example, lending and charity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wants you to lend and give people money, qard. So lending is good. In fact, even some of the ulama, such as Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, is of the opinion that it is wajib on you to lend if you're not in need of it and if the other person is in need of it. For example, it is wajib on you to lend on a millionaire, for example, who doesn't have requirement for all his money, to lend some money if someone comes to him and say, hey, so and so, I need to borrow £1,000. So it's wajib on that millionaire who doesn't need all that money to lend the £1,000. So it's very important to understand that Islam has actually, Islam really wants us to do these sort of contracts. So what is recommended is, for example, lending, and what is also recommended, for example, charity. So to give money in charity is also a recommended contract or a recommended aqd. The next example, for example, something that is permissible, such as buying and selling and renting. These are permissible contracts. They are not recommended. Allah doesn't want you to buy and sell, recommend you to. Neither does He makes it wajib, but rather it is permissible. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. And Allah has made it halal for buying and selling and made riba haram. So therefore we understand that buying and selling is halal. An example of a disliked contract, a hukum in disliked contract, is, for example, selling grapes to the one who will make wine from it. And if you know that if you have a doubt that perhaps this person will use it for, make wine out of it, then this is disliked for you to sell it. However, if you know for sure he will use it for wine, then it becomes haram for you to do so, right? But if you have a slight doubt, and that is usually the case, because normally people don't ask. Normally people don't ask, what are you going to use it for? Hey, I'm selling a computer. What are you going to use it for? But if you have a slight doubt, this guy looks, whatever, he's from such and such a place, and most probably he will use it for haram, then it's makruh for you to sell it to him. If you know definitely he will use it for haram, like he says, I'm going to use this wine in order to make this grape in order to make wine from it, then at that point you say, okay, it's haram for you to sell it to him, right? And an example of a forbidden type of contract, and I put in there 5 different things because I want to talk about them. Example of a forbidden contract is, for example, lending with riba. So giving money, to someone to lend, along with the condition of that you want extra money back, and that is haram and is forbidden. Second is, for example, selling dead meat or pork or alcohol or statues or musical instruments. Selling these sort of things which the Sharia has forbidden, is not permissible. So you can't sell dogs because Rasulullah has prohibited the selling of dogs, for example. Rasulullah also, and because dogs are najis, for example. And as we mentioned already, najis, thing that is najis is not to be sold. Also, for example, dirty magazines. Also, for example, musical instruments. These are all things that must not be sold. What if we were selling mobile phones that have musical instruments in it? What if you're selling mobile phones? It's a valid question, isn't it? Mobile phones that have, probably 20 out of the 30 rings in it are music. What's the hukum? Those people who attended the lesson yesterday would know the hukum.